There are primaries in 4 states tomorrow, including West Virginia, where polls show notorious coal baron Don Blankenship with a real shot at winning the GOP Senate primary, at least internal polls from campaigns take with a grain of salt, despite serving a year in prison for his role in a mine disaster that killed 29 people. Joining me now to discuss why Blankenship and similar candidates resonate with the GOP base, former Reagan administration official Linda Chavez, columnist and former Reagan administration official Mona Charen, and Leon Wolfe, managing editor of the conservative website The Blaze. Leon, how is Blankenship in the running?
Well, I think that what a lot of Republican voters have learned is, you know, or at least have decided for themselves, is that they kind of want to get the same high and positive feeling that they get out of rooting for a sports team that wins. They really like just the feeling of winning more than they like, you know, principles. And I think, rightly or wrongly, that a lot of Republicans perceive that for years Democrats have basically stood by their candidates almost no matter what they said or did. And I still hear people talking about, well, they stood by Ted Kennedy for years after Chappaquiddick. They stood by Bill Clinton through everything he did. They stood by Joe Biden after he bragged about Delaware being a slave state, that they've just decided that, you know, these are the rules that we're going to play by too. And so rightly and wrongly, this is kind of where we are. Do you really think that's, I mean, do you really think that's a fair symmetry with the way things are now? I just don't see anyone in a Democratic primary like Roy Moore. Like, there's just no Democratic Roy Moore right now. There just isn't. Well, I mean, look, I mean, you know, Dennis Kucinich has definitely said some bizarre things, and he's still involved in a reasonably competitive race that's going up tomorrow as well. But no, I'm not saying that they're equivalent now, and I definitely think that there's kind of this air of triumphalism that is maybe a little over the top of what you see of the Democratic side. But I'm telling you, that's the perception, and I think that's what's fueling a lot of what you're seeing out there in terms of people just, well, you know, we'll be okay with anything as long as our guy wins.
Mona, what do you think?
Well, you notice that the president tweeted that people should not vote for Blankenship, reminded them of what happened in Alabama. But of course, this is a real problem because the logic of the Trump campaign was nihilism. Let's blow it all up. The system is completely corrupt. You need somebody like me. You know, I'll be a wrecking ball if you send me to Washington. That was the logic of the Trump appeal, and a lot of people went for that in the Republican Party. And now Trump is in the position of saying, well, whoa, you know, I didn't mean, you know, recently released felons or whatever he was convicted of, people who were responsible for the deaths of 29 minors. But this thing has a momentum and a life of its own, and even Trump is having trouble controlling what has been unleashed.
Is there something different now, Linda, or does this go back a while?
Well, I think there is something different, and I think it is the T word, but it's not triumphalism, it's tribalism. And I think that's very much what's at play here. It is sort of like a sports team or a tribe. Republicans are involved in a culture war. They've picked sides. They've decided that the Republican Party represents an America that Trump sees. And I think, you know, Don Blankenship, you know, his China people ad may very well have resonated with some of those voters. I think it did,
but I just want to interject one thing here. We're talking about a primary, okay? I understand the sort of cruel tribalist logic of, look, you vote for the nominee of your party because they're going to go and they're going to vote on judges and do all this stuff. But they have a choice. They got 3 Republicans. You do not have to vote for the guy who's responsible for a mine that killed 29 people. There's 2 other people. They hate Barack Obama. They love Donald Trump. They're Republicans. You had Luther Strange in Alabama. I do not get this desire to vote for a person who seems the most odious when you're just choosing between other Republicans.
Well, because they don't consider people like Mona Charen or myself as conservatives, even though our conservative credentials go way, way back. They don't consider us part of the tribe. And I think they're looking for people like Donald Trump who are politically incorrect. I think political incorrectness has become now a badge of honor in the Republican Party, and Don Blankenship knew exactly what he was doing when he ran that China people ad.
Leon.
To the point where Steve Bannon has said that you should wear the charge of racism as a badge of honor.
Right. Yeah, and I would explain it slightly differently. I think that it's mainly, it's one thing, it's nice to win, but it's even nicer if you can win while rubbing your opponent's face in it.
Right.
And I think that's what they got with Trump, and I think that's what they're trying to get with Blankenship.
But then,
like,
so
here's somebody they really hate, so let's go with them.
That's exactly what it is. It's all the right enemies, right? The idea is that, like, there's this kind of bank shot logic, which is that if the right people hate me, then I have to be good. Right. And you end up in these crazy situations where you're like, you know, you're voting for a guy that's alleged in Alabama to like have molested children.
Right.
Because it's making the liberals crazy.
And
you're also
on
voting.
Both sides are marinating in hatred, both Republicans and Democrats. Honestly, what does the Democratic Party stand for this year? Nothing except hating Trump, which is understandable. And the Republican Party doesn't stand for anything. The Republicans are doing nothing on Capitol Hill. They are not interested in doing anything except rubbing liberals' noses in people that they find odious.
But the problem is, if somebody like Don Blankenship actually gets the nomination, he's going to go exactly the way Roy Moore did, and he's going to lose. So all these people who want to win are going to lose.
Well, let me just say this, though. Let me to respond to that. And obviously, the mechanisms by which people justify things on their team, I think, is something that extends across the political spectrum. I 100% agree. People will excuse all kinds of behavior. But the reason I'm so focused on the primaries here is because there's a seeking out happening in the primaries that's different than, you know, okay, we have to stand by this person who's been accused because we can't let them take a scalp, right, on the other team. Like that's sort of the perversity there, the sort of luxuriating in the perversity that is really what it seems to me is happening with Moore and with Blankenship and with Trump does seem distinct. It doesn't seem like that's a symmetrical phenomenon in American life right now to me.
I agree.
And you've got people like Joe Arpaio in Arizona.
Yeah,
there you have, you know, Vice President
or Kelly
Pence.
Ward.
Or Kelly Ward.
I mean, in Arizona.
Yeah.
Leon, can you explain to me? I understand that party leadership is often not very popular with the faithful, but it was interesting to me that Blankenship chose Mitch McConnell. Basically, he's like, here's who I'm going to run against. I'm not going to run against my opponents. I'm just going to run against Mitch McConnell. Like, just out of, and it was a somewhat similar strategy Roy Moore took on. Explain what that's about.
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, we are in a Republican primary, you know, so I mean, he has no reason to attack the Democrat right now, and kind of the surest way to align yourself, I guess, with the part of the party who's most closely aligned with Trump and is very popular in West Virginia is to take on the Republican establishment. But, you know,
but why do they hate him so much? Like, what is that? You can take on people and it doesn't work, but there's something there that says Mitch McConnell is what?
Well, Mitch McConnell is just kind of a symbol of what basically Trump was elected to combat, I think, in a lot of these people's minds, which is, you know, just kind of business as usual in Washington. People who say they're going to get things done and they don't get things done. And we have seen some continuation of that, you know, even with the Republican president. I mean, for years, Mitch McConnell promised that an Obamacare repeal was coming. The excuse was, well, we don't have enough senators, we don't have enough representatives, the president's going to veto it. All those things were washed away in 2016. He still doesn't get it done at the end of the day. So there's a lot of frustration, I think, built up.
Mona, you get the final word here.
In another world, in another universe, I guess, you could imagine a situation in which President Trump would say to Blankenship, how dare you impugn my Secretary of Transportation and make racist comments about her?
Yes.
You know, you are out, you know, you are excommunicated. But of course, that's not the Trump style.
That's a great point, as opposed to the sort of meta argument that he can't win the general, as opposed to you're acting in a despicable fashion and you have the blood of 29 minors on your hands.
Exactly.
Linda Chavez, Mona Sharon, and Leon Wolfe, thank you all for being with me. That is